Jones at lawschooly.com. Today we're looking at Preptest 62, Game 1. And this is a pretty straightforward game, like many games that are game number 1 in a section. It's not the hardest thing in the world, but it's a lot harder than many older game 1. So this is definitely a modern prep test where it's pretty common to see difficulty spread more evenly throughout the games, and this is by no means one that you can just breeze through. So let's hop right in and take a look at the setup. Okay, so the setup is classic simple ordering, one row where we're placing our variables, and we're going to have one of these going into each spot. You know, we've got enough for each spot, and we're going to just use each one time. So it's pretty simple in that regard. What's tricky here is the questions, and we'll see that later. But now let's just knock out the setup. First things first, we have the rule that W must be scheduled earlier than the landscaping appointment. W, then L. And then we have the rule that P must be before G and S. So I'm writing that in the LSAT trainer style here. P, G, and S branching off. This tells us that we don't know if G is first or S is first. We just know that they're both after P. So we could have like PGS, or we could have PSG. Sorry, I drew an R there, but you get the idea. Anyways, so that's the only two ordering rules we have. It'd probably actually be nice if we had a few more, but we don't. And then it goes second to these not law rules. So let's look at that. The appointment scheduled for second and third days cannot be gas, satellite, or telephone. So those are gone. And then same thing with the third day. Gas, satellite, and telephone are gone. So I put those in as not laws. Sometimes, you know, this is one thing that PowerScore often will have you do. They'd like say L can't be first here. You'd add a lot of additional not laws, or G and S can't be first. And then you'd have like W cannot be last. To me, that often gets a little cluttered up. I prefer to leave it so that I just have the not laws that they gave us. But this is one exception that I would like to make. Because of this PGS rule, G and S can't go first. I think that's definitely worth noting. Sorry, I drew that as G and G. I think that's definitely worth noting because now G and S are stuck in this back end. And you could also draw that with like some brackets too, to symbolize that it's going to be somewhere in these three spaces. And then also, you know, T is pretty limited. You could note that we have this final rule that the telephone appointment can't be on day 6. So you got to cross that off too with another not rule. And now T is stuck in just 1, 4, 5. And then G and S are back here. And you could keep note of the fact that you only have in this 2 and 3 spot, you only have L, P, and W that can go there. So something to note anyways. Okay, so looking at the questions now, we've got an acceptability question. I'm not going to handle that, but do it the same way you do any acceptability question. Take each rule one at a time and see where it's violated. If it's violated, cross that answer choice out, and eventually you'll be left with one standing. In this case, if you've done it already, D was the correct answer. Okay, so let's take a look at 2, our first hard question. Draw that nicer. 2. Okay, so for question 2, we're going to draw a mini diagram up here. We've got our 6 spaces. Early in the game, when you're still getting a handle on the rules, I often redraw these not laws so I can remember it better. We could add in the G and S that we liked having there. And then we've got the rule for this game. It's asking us, what if GS and T is not, none of those are scheduled for the 4th day. So we'd be adding this additional GS and T cross out here. And what does that do? all of a sudden G and S have very little places they can go. They can only go in these back two spots. G, S, G, S. And if you're sharp, you'll then see that the T, which is our other very limited variable, so when you start using up spaces, look where your very limited variables can still go. The T can't be in any of these three spaces. It's stuck in first. So now, immediately, I made a pretty great inference, so I want to check if that answered the question. What must be true in this situation? I'd look for T having to be first, and if you scan the answer choices, yeah, that's answer choice D, the correct answer in this case. So that knocks out question 2. Question 3 is a must be true question. It's just asking us something that must be true all the time. It's not adding any extra rules or anything like that. So it's clearly some sort of inference that we missed, and we just have to dig through and find it. And I think there's nothing for it here but to get straight to work and start trying these out, hopefully eliminate some with some prior work if we can. So if we look at A, it's asking if this must be true. L is for an earlier day than T, L before T. No, because we had T in the first spot here already in when we were doing the work for question 2. So you can eliminate A right away. So A is gone. Always learn to use prior work like that if you possibly can. So now B, P is for an earlier day than L. P then earlier than L, must that be true? One thing you could do that could save a little bit of time here is you could just look at the correct answer in 1 and see that P and L can just switch there. That's no problem. So that's one quick way to eliminate it. If not, you might have to try a whole scenario out where you put P after L, and you'll find out that, yeah, that's totally fine to do. So this isn't something that must be true, P before L. So let's look at C now. C, we have T is for an earlier day than G. Again, you know, does this have to be true? If we didn't have this whole business up here in question 1, it would have been fine to get G and S after T. To get T after G and S. And so I wouldn't think this is a promising answer choice. If you don't see that right away, you can just try it out. So let's say we want to get G somewhere before T to eliminate this and show that it could be false. So let's do that. Let's just put P here, and then W, L, and then how about G here, then T, then S. And that's a perfectly acceptable order. We're not violating any of these rules here. We got our W, L right, our P and G and S is right, and C is gone. So sorry that takes a long time to explain, but when you get good at doing out little example scenarios quickly, it doesn't take a whole lot of time, and that's one key thing to getting better. It's getting fast and just knocking those out when you need to. Let's look at D. D asks us what if does this have to be true? T earlier than water. T earlier than water, and in this case, luckily, the work that we just did here eliminates that, so D is gone. And if you didn't have that, it's just a matter of doing another scenario that shows that, no, you can have W before T. So we're left with E as the correct answer by elimination. It's worth noting that it would make a lot of sense. It says the water appointment is scheduled for an earlier day than gas. Water than gas. Well, yeah, water looks like it kind of has to be pretty early. It can't be here, obviously. And then G and S are kind of stuck in the back. So if you try and get W in here, you might quickly realize that you run out of room for G and S. W, L, G or S. Then you'd have to throw one of G or S out here into these three spots, and that's not legal for reasons we discussed earlier. So it's it's very difficult to get, it's impossible to get W before G. Try it, like G, W, L, then S is stuck out front here. So another way to get at the right answer for that question might have been to kind of look for that as a likely candidate and test it out first. Okay, so yeah, I think that's really the hardest question in the game, 3. I mean, if you're even doing that relatively quickly, you're pretty happy. So it gets easier from there, luckily. Okay, 4 just asks us, gives us a bunch of orders and asks which one cannot be the order for the 4th, 5th, and 6th days. I had what I thought was a really good intuition here, and that's that if we take this L, P, and W, right, they have to be in this 2 and 3 spot. And then we look at 2 of those have to go into this 2 and 3 spot, right? So what if we see 3, what if we see 2 of those outside of that 2 and 3 spot? And that's what answer choice E gives us. So like that was how I got to it. An alternative way to think about it would be, okay, well G and S have to be in the 4 and 5 spot. So you see anything that doesn't contain both S and G, that's immediately wrong. That might actually be the easiest way to get to this. So if you just scan A, yeah, G and S is there, B, yeah, G and S, C, D, etc., then you get to E, and no, G and S are not both in there. So that's the way to eliminate that and get to E, your correct answer. Thankfully, that one was much faster than question 3, so there's some hope for finishing this game within a reasonable amount of time. All right, 5 asks us, if neither G nor S is scheduled for day 6, so now we have G, S, and T gone there. And then remember, I'll rewrite it even though I think probably wouldn't have to at this point. You know G and S and T can't go here. Well, and then G and S are gone here as well, right? Because of the PGS rule. That leaves only these 2 spots for G and S. So I'm making that inference right away, and it's asking which of the following must be true. So I can scan the answer choices, and this doesn't answer it yet, right? So then we have to make further inferences. Well, T has to be here, right? So we now see that. Does that answer the question? T and 1? No, unfortunately it doesn't. That would be too much like question 2, so I'm not surprised that it's not the right answer. So we have to keep working here, and what's remaining? Well, P has to be somewhere in these 2 spots, because it has to be before G and S. So we got P in here, right? And then that leaves only the W and L block to handle, and then W also would have to be in here, and then L has to be over here. The reason being that otherwise you can't get these in the right order. If you try and put L here, P's already here, right? And then that forces W into this back spot, and that's no good. So L has to be out here, and then look for that in the answer choices, and you'll see that here it is, B, landscaping must be the 6th day. That must be true, so it's the correct answer. Last question, question 6, is one of these tricky worded questions, and you'll run into this type of question. It's like a rule suspension question. It's like what happens if we get rid of a rule, then it asks you something else. And here it's asking, is there a way to get rid of this rule, the one that says T can't be in 6, and then could we build another rule that has the same effect of having T not be in 6? So you just have to look for a rule that's going to end up with this exact same result. And when I would look at this, I would say to myself, okay, well, there's nothing we can do except just look at these one by one and try to evaluate them. So here it's saying in A, the T must be scheduled before gas T, or T must be before S or both, which would look like this, T, G, S. Does that have the effect of not allowing T to be in 6? Yeah, it does. So if it has to be before one of G or S, it could never be in that final 6 spot, or it would be violating one of these two rules. So luckily here, for saving time, answer choice A is the correct answer. So this question rewards people who are going to get right down to business and realize what they have to do, which is just start evaluating the answer choices. If you're panicking and thinking about some rule in your head that would do this in advance, you're going to have trouble. So just get straight to the answer choices, and you'll have no problem finding A. And that's something that's worth talking about, which is that good test takers know when they should be doing other work, like making inferences, and when they should just be checking answer choices and working with them to eliminate them directly. So that's something that, with practice, you'll build the skill to know how to balance your time as you're handling the questions and what task you should be doing when. So with A, with question 6, yeah, you should be checking answers, and then that'll yield A quickly. So that caps off a pretty tough game. Certainly not the hardest, but I think for inexperienced test takers, that might have been a major kind of game that would trip you up. So hopefully you felt good about this one, because this is, pretty indicative of what a modern LSAT is going to look like. By test 62, we're less than 10 away from the modern tests. So, from the most recent prep tests. So this is a very modern exam, and will be a pretty good indicator of how you might do on test day if you're taking it as a simulated test. Okay, so that's it for game 1. We'll take a look at game 2 next.